What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. Today, joined by all three of my co-hosts, Anthony Rivardo, Will Cohen, and Colin Alcaves. We got the four-piece here. The gang's all back together. I know a lot of people were asking, where's Anthony last night in the live stream? Here he is. So you guys can stop asking me that question. But Rangers had a phenomenal performance last night against the Washington Capitals. Narrowly took a 2-0 series lead over them. So we got a lot to break down here, just going over all the things that went right in the game, some of the things that went wrong, specifically the officiating. But before we do, make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss notification. If you're watching us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review. Leave your thoughts on the game down in the comment section below. And lastly, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers. But before we really get into this Game 2 breakdown and analysis, Anthony, my friend, welcome back. We missed you. How are you doing today?
Doing great, man. Feels good to be on the show. It's been a little bit of a minute. I only make these guest appearances now. NFL draft season over at Fireside Giants has me super busy, but happy to get on here, talk some Rangers, big Game 2 win, and super excited to dive into it.
Of course, and everyone watching, if you are a Giants fan, make sure you check out Thursday night. Fireside Giants is going live to do the full NFL draft coverage. Tony will be there. Who knows? Maybe I'll make a guest appearance, even though I know nothing about football. Probably not. Better chance of Will maybe in there. Speaking of Will, though, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. I had a quiz, bombed, changed an answer and got a 6 out of 10 instead of an 8 out of 10, like a low-key pissed. It was so easy. Other than that, I'm doing really good today. I enjoyed the game yesterday. I thought we played pretty well, so I'm excited for Friday. I can't believe we have 2 days off in between games.
Yeah, it's a little annoying. I'm going to be a little bored for 2 days, but we'll come back, rest it up, get ready for Game 3. Colin, how's Disney? How you doing?
It's good. It's good. It was tough yesterday. I was trying to watch the game. My phone died, so I was watching behind some guy online. He also had it on his phone. It just happened to be following a Rangers fan on the line to Pandora at Animal Kingdom. So we were bonding over that. We missed the last 2 minutes, which is probably the most crucial part of the game to watch. Just because we actually had to get on the ride, but it's good. It's good. I'm happy we got the win. The parts that I was able to catch did look good. Obviously, I got a couple criticisms here and there, and I'm excited to get into that.
Yeah. I think the first thing that I want to talk about is the officiating last night. I think within the first 9 minutes of the game, there was probably like 4 missed calls against the Capitals that really should have put the Rangers on the power play. I think the biggest one, in my opinion, was when Mika Zibanejad was tripped and the stick literally like bent like that, and Mika basically did a front flip over it, and there was no call. Obviously, kind of went both ways too. There were a couple of plays the Rangers definitely should have been penalized. They weren't. One of the biggest ones probably that Panarin hit, but we'll do it like an own discussion on that in a little bit. Just the officiating, it made me so mad. And Wes McCauley, I think he hates the Rangers. I feel like every time he's the ref when we're playing, it just goes horribly wrong. And people be like, "Oh, but he makes funny calls." I don't care. I want him to make the right calls. So I don't know, Will. How did you feel about the officiating in last night's matchup?
Dude, they were terrible. Like one of my good friends, he's a Caps fan. We were talking about it today. They missed so many calls on both sides. I know they missed. Could have been a trip. Fox against Ovi. I think he tripped Ovi. He was pretty pissed about that. Ovi was. Will Cooley got high stick by Oshie. Panarin got high stick by Oshie. The Zibanejad, he got tripped, obviously. I mean, it was terrible. And these first 2 games, they're putting their hand in the pot, and it's the playoffs. Like, I get it. There's things that, there are penalties that should be called, but some of them are just so soft or so like it. I don't know. They need to be more consistent. They've been terrible. Wes McCauley and Kelly Sutherland are my 2 least favorite refs. I hate them so much, but they were terrible yesterday, and it was inexcusable. Sorry.
Very inexcusable. I think the NHL needs to do something about it. Tony, how are you feeling? Do you think the refs might have had the Capitals money line or anything? Or if you're the NHL, how do you respond to the bad officiating?
I mean, I think they probably just send the refs a message and tell them to be better in the next game. I don't think they had the money line. Like Will said, there was missed calls really on both sides. Obviously, early on in the game, it seemed like they were favoring the Caps, but you could go both ways on some of the calls later in the game. And I think that the Rangers got shafted a few times. You can argue that the Caps got shafted as well. And just overall, it is playoff hockey. I think that there's always going to be a few moments where calls get let go. And at the end of the day, that's the trade-off. There's going to be some calls that you want to be made, but there's going to be some calls that you like to get away with in the playoffs. And so I just think it's a part of the game.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it's just one of those things that's really frustrating to see, especially when it's the same two refs doing the same thing over and over again. Colin, kind of talking about that Panarin hit. I know you said before we hit record that Capitals fans were crying, saying that if Tom Wilson did that, he would have been crucified by the NHL, but he did do it. And then Panarin just did something similar. So break down that whole situation for me. How are you feeling about that hit?
I thought that was a clean hit. I think that he doesn't leave his feet. I think the primary point of contact is the chest, but because Oshie lunges for the puck, there is unfortunately some head contact that is unavoidable when you put yourself in a position like that. Sometimes those plays happen. If you leave yourself vulnerable, you might get hit. I don't think that there was any intent to injure. I don't think it was dirty. And I think if you look at the hit by Wilson just in game one against Zibanejad, he catches him clean in the chest, also catching a little bit of head as well. And there was no qualms with any of no problems from any Capitals fans there. But, TJ Oshie goes down and all of a sudden it's World War III. They want to see Wilson body slamming Panarin on the ice again. It's just like, show some consistency. It's the same things that we're bitching and moaning about the refs, and while the refs did miss a lot of calls, at least they missed it both ways. And they're just still, I think, had 6 power plays, which is a lot. But just like we want the refs to be consistent with what you're calling a dirty hit and a clean hit. You can't go out there and defend a dirty player 24/7 and then come up on a clean play or a questionably clean play and be like, oh, yeah, that's dirty because it happened to us. That's just not how it works, unfortunately. Yeah. So, I think they need to open their eyes, maybe watch a little bit more of what's going on from their own team before they start, pulling other people's players into questions.
And can I add to that real quick? The entire game, Oshie was going after Panarin, high sticked him, grabbed his face. At some point, you got to realize that Oshie's not the good guy in this situation. I get it that maybe the hit looked a little dirty. There were multiple angles of it. You could tell by one of the angles, the primary contact was the chest, but he was targeting him all game. At some point, Panarin's going to get pissed, and obviously he just made that hit, and that was that. But Caps fans got to realize that Oshie was not the good guy in the situation.
Yeah, I mean, you are right. I've seen the clips of Panarin and Oshie going at it pretty much the entire game. The hit was well-deserved. Whether or not you think the hit was clean or not, that's up to you. But I think we're all in agreement pretty much fully that it was a clean hit. Colin broke it down pretty much perfectly. Most of the contact was body, and it only even grazed his head because Oshie lunged for the puck. It's not really anything Panarin could do to control that. When the NHL reviewed it for a major penalty, I think they made the right decision by saying no penalty given at all. But as far as the officiating goes and the refs, I do agree with what Colin said. Consistency is the biggest thing. If they're going to decide that something is a penalty and something isn't, they got to stick to it throughout the entire series, really just especially the entire season. The refs really have it out for Matt Rempe. He took a roughing penalty last night that just didn't exist. That was a big notable standout to me, as well as that Zibanejad trip. And the other high sticking to who was it? Lindgren got hit.
Wenberg got hit too.
Oh,
yeah, Wenberg took one too. It was a little ridiculous, but let's move on from complaining about the refs. It's in the past. It is what it is. Hopefully, it's better for Game 3. Let's talk about what went right for the Rangers, and I think the offensive explosion from a lot of our top guys is something that was long overdue, and it finally happened. Our predictions were right in the fact the Capitals came out in Game 2 skating faster, playing harder. They pretty much dominated the first 9 minutes of the game. Yep. And then the Rangers somehow found their footing, got momentum going, and we pretty much just exploded for a bunch of goals. Vincent Trocheck had his first of the postseason. Mika Zibanejad also had his first. Lafreniere, Trocheck had a couple of assists. Jack Roslovic, Keandre Miller, both goal scorers. To me, I think the most impressive goal of the night was from Jack Roslovic. Absolute snipe that we had there. Happy to see him finally, scoring goals and producing with the first line. Zibanejad had things going too. He had a goal and an assist. Even Kreider had an assist. So all of our top guys that we've been talking about that need to score really cranked up the intensity and got it done in game 2. So I'm more than happy about that. Anthony, I don't know if there was any offensive player that really stood out to you, but if so, who might that be?
I'm rocking with Alexis Lafreniere, man. Great performance from him. You guys know I'm a big Lafreniere fan. I love my boy Lafreniere. 2 assists for him. Trocheck with a goal as well. You know that I rock with my boy. And I got to give shout out to Gustafsson for a really nice assist on that Trocheck goal. And Trocheck put it away. I thought that was one of the highlights of the game, one of the best plays that the Rangers had. And you got to be impressed with the way that the offense has played through these first 2 games. I think especially when you're taking a look at the matchup, you expect this Rangers team to win these matchups with the Capitals, expect the offense to play well, but they have, 4 games last night, or 4 goals last night, 4 goals in game 1. So they're just continuing to roll and play well. And those were the 2 players and moments that really stood out to me.
Yeah, averaging 4 goals a game is pretty impressive. That's the type of offensive production the Rangers are going to need. I know heading into the series, we were, I don't want to say nervous, but we accepted the fact that Charlie Lindgren might be able to steal 1 or 2 games for the Caps. But, so far we've pretty much opened up the floodgates, and he's looked solid, but it's not enough to stop the Rangers. So, Will, I'll ask you the same question. With the amount of goals that we've been scoring so far, which forward has impressed you the most?
Man, that's kind of I don't know, that's a tough question to me. I think Mika's impressed me the most. I know we had our doubts with him coming into the playoffs. He didn't have his best season, but he's been rolling recently, and he's been rolling. He had 6 shots on goal yesterday. I mean, he is just firing on all cylinders. What does he have? I think he has 3 points. Yeah, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. So he's been producing in pretty big ways, making very key defensive plays as well. Help with that shorthand, that Miller shorthanded goal created that play, made the defensive play, breaking out, and then obviously Miller found the back of the net. But yeah, Zibanejad has easily been my forward that I've been most impressed with.
Yeah, good take right there. I know I never gave my opinion. I would have to agree with Tony and say Lafreniere and Zibanejad. I think if I had to pick, it'd be one of those 2. Colin, how are you? How are you feeling? Who's your boy right now? Who are you riding?
I gotta say, I have 2 potentials. I mean, one of them is obvious. Anybody could go and say Panarin, but he does what he needs to do every night. He clocks in, clocks out, and it's always exceeding our expectations. But I'm going to say Barclay Goodrow. I think since the playoffs have started, I think he's been extremely noticeable in both zones. He's just been an absolute pest, a thorn in the opposition side, and he's constantly there hounding them for the puck. And it's a welcome sight because after all season, everybody, especially me, I was bitching about how expensive he is and what he really brings to this team. And these last 2 games, he's really stepped it up. And when the lights have shined brightest, he has really stepped up to the moment and delivered some of his strongest games of the season.
Mm-hmm. I know you said Panarin might be an obvious answer for some, and while I do agree he had a phenomenal game 1, I do want to just point out that last night in game 2, he did have over 20 minutes of ice time and did not record a single shot on net. Obviously, it's only 1 game, so I don't want to hit the panic button or anything. But Panarin, I just think he needs to be ready to go for game 3 and just revert back to what game 1 looked like for me. But speaking of shots on goal, Alex Ovechkin, arguably the greatest goal scorer of all time, has been held to just 1 shot throughout both games so far. So, of all the offensive threats that the Capitals have, we would have expected him to be the most dangerous. But somehow, some way, we've prevented that from happening. So, the question is Ovechkin just getting old? Does he not have it anymore? Or is the Rangers defense just that good? Tony, how do you feel?
I think the Rangers defense is playing great. I mean, obviously there was 3 goals given up yesterday, but if you go back to game 1, only 1 goal allowed. And I think you also have to give some credit to Igor Shesterkin. There were a few shots last night that he did save the Rangers on, but generally speaking, I thought the defense turned in another solid performance. It's 2 in a row in the postseason. If you look at the plus minus, only a defender that was minus was Ryan Lindgren, and I thought there were some really nice plays out there from Fox. And like I said earlier, Gustafsson, especially on the offensive end. But I think that the defense has been playing well. I don't think it's necessarily any one player being washed up. I just think it's collectively, as a whole, the Rangers defensive unit has been playing pretty solid.
I would have to agree there too. Will, how do you feel?
I'm in agreement with Tony. I think our defense has been playing really good. I mean, Ovechkin was hot coming into the playoffs. I think he had 25 goals since the All-Star break. So I think the defense is just playing him very well. They're taking away his shooting lanes. They're making him into a playmaker, which he isn't very much of anymore, and it's causing him to be ineffective. So I really think it's the defense as a whole is just holding him to is holding him very well and defending him very well and taking away his shooting lanes whenever he has the puck on his stick.
Colin.
Yeah, I think that, whenever you're talking about a guy like Ovechkin, he's legendary. So anytime that you're able to hold him to as few shots as possible, I think that's obviously key to success. And I think even this season, he might not have been the best, but he still had, what was he? He had over 30 goals, right? I think he had 31.
I think he had over 31. I think he had 31, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, at this age to still be potting 31 goals is absolutely absurd. He's coming up on Gretzky's record. So, I mean, you can't ever take anything that he does, for granted. And the fact that we're able to keep him not only off the score sheet, but off of the stat sheet almost as a whole in terms of shots is, huge. I think still what he does for this team, or what he does for the Capitals, I mean, is that he demands a lot of attention. I think that does open up other players, and you can make the same argument for Panarin. But, fortunately for us, the other players around Ovechkin aren't as potent as the players that we have in our top six. So when, you're putting a guy and marking up Panarin, you still have the threat of Lafreniere to score, Trocheck to score. Whereas with the Capitals, they aren't as wealthy in the top six as the Rangers are. And I think that's the big difference maker. Obviously, a huge shout out to the defense. It's giving, towards the beginning of the season when they were really lights out and Trouba was leading the league in blocks and things like that. It's sort of the same energy as what I'm getting. Like, they're playing very, very well. Hopefully they can keep that going and there's no regression there. But yeah, anytime you're able to hold a guy as talented as Ovechkin off the stat sheet, I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I know the Capitals head coach, I forget his name, but he had like an official quote. He admitted Ovechkin is struggling a little bit. And, honestly, as much as I hate to see it, as like someone who grew up watching the Grade 8, I'm more than fine with it for the next couple games. If he just continues to struggle, maybe has a little bit of a bounce back year, catches Gretzky next season. But the Rangers do still have a lot of work left to do in this series. So the last thing I want to discuss before we wrap up is just big things heading into the third game of the series. Obviously, the Rangers lead 2-0, won both games at home, but now they're heading on the road to face 2 away games in the nation's capital. So to me, I think the biggest key moving forward is to just not get too comfortable. The Rangers were in the exact same position last season where they dominated 2 games of play against the Devils, had that 2-0 lead, and then they were going home. So they had even more of an advantage there. And the next thing you know, we lose 4 out of the next 5 games, and the New Jersey Devils move on to the second round. So, like, as confident as I am in the Rangers right now against the Capitals, I know it's a completely different series where the Rangers heavily outmatched the Capitals in basically every aspect of the game, but I don't want to see us get too comfortable. The Capitals came out flying in game 2. You have to assume that the level of urgency and just how desperate they are is going to ramp up even further heading home to DC. And the last thing I want to see is Rangers use these next 2 days without playing to just relax, get too comfortable, and then get caught off guard moving into game 3. So that's my biggest thing. Stay locked in at all times. Don't give the Capitals any room to even attempt to mount a comeback. But Tony, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling confident. Like, I'm feeling really good. I get, it's good on you to bring that up, how the Rangers had a similar positioning last year in the postseason, but this is a different Rangers team. It's same players, but different, right? Like, Panarin last year is not the same as Panarin this year. I fully believe that. I don't think we're going to see that kind of choke job from last year. It's not going to be repeated. I'm 100% confident that Panarin's going to stay locked in. The way that he played throughout the regular season, I think it's going to carry over. I know that you mentioned earlier, Eric, that, maybe a little bit of a down game from him in game 2. Not really, though. He set up a lot of passes. Mm-hmm. Shots just didn't get finished, and that happens. There were some really good saves out there that were stolen. Panarin's still cooking, and he's going to keep cooking. And then the other big difference for me, first of all, this team is healthy right now. Obviously, they had a lot of injuries that they dealt with throughout the regular season. No Filipino, of course, but still, this team is pretty healthy, and I don't see that really changing. If that does change, then sure, maybe our confidence will waver. Right now, this team is healthy. And the other big difference, and I've said this pretty much every time I'm on this show, Eric, you already know where I'm going with this.
I already know what you're going to say.
This is not a Gallant-led team. This is a Peter Laviolette-led team, and that's why I'm a believer. I'm so confident in this team. I love the way that Laviolette has handled every piece of adversity that's been thrown at this team throughout the season, whether you're talking about injuries or a funk from a guy like Zibanejad. Whatever the problem was, Laviolette found a way to persevere and get this team back on the right track. Maybe his methods were a little unorthodox sometimes. They worked, though. And that's why I'm really confident in this postseason, especially talking about being up 2-0, going over to the nation's capital against a historically bad postseason team. Statistically, I know it's probably a big talking point. Statistically, the worst playoff team ever, this Capitals team. Laviolette is not going to choke this one. I'm feeling as confident as I possibly could. And also, again, because you want to take a look at the stats of this Washington team, it's not like we're going up against that Devils team from last year. That was a good team. This Capitals team, not nearly as good. This Rangers team, far better than any of those teams I were just mentioned. And again, a lot of that, I believe, has to do with Peter Laviolette. And also, shout out to the emergence of guys like Lafreniere playing really well right now. Trocheck, I thought, was really poor in game one. I thought he made a few mistakes, missed a few shots. I didn't like the way that he played in game one. Bounced the F back in game two. And I think he's going to keep it up. I'm really confident in this team right now. And again, just repeating the point one last time, I'm a big Peter Laviolette believer. I can't stand Gallant, and I'm very happy that he's no longer leading this Rangers team.
I think we all are as Rangers fans. I say this all the time too. Just watching the 1 year difference from what Gallant had to what Laviolette made it, it really makes you wonder: does Gerard Gallant actually know how to play hockey? Like, what was he doing the whole time? But confidence is key, I think. I know you also mentioned that we are without Philip Hedl. Well, let's not forget he is skating with the team, and he could return at any moment. Laviolette said it's not out of the question that we might see Philip Hedl at some point in this playoff run. Rangers accidentally circumvent the cap. We use the loophole the way that it was intended. Who knows? But Will, moving into game 3, the away games, what do you think is the biggest thing?
I agree with both of you. Just don't get comfortable. But like I said, or not like I said, but what, like Tony said, this isn't a Gerard Gallant-led team. Like last year, they went up 2-0. Lindy Ruff made he fixed some things, and Gerard Gallant couldn't respond back with anything. He didn't make any he didn't fix anything of his own. So Peter Laviolette's been very good at doing that this year, and I think this is a completely different team. This is their third straight series that they led 2-0 through 2 games, and obviously we know how the last 2 series went, but I think this team's a lot more different. I liked what Mark Messier said before Sunday's game. They're more mature now. They've been through. You have to go through loss before you can win, and this team's a lot more mature. They know what's at stake this year, and they know what they have to do. I mean, Panarin was like, our expectation is to win a cup, so they know what's at stake. So just not getting comfortable. Keep doing what you've been doing in games 1 and 2. Obviously, I don't want to see I don't want to see the same ref show that we saw in the first 2 games either. But keep what you've been doing. I like how you brought up Panarin, Eric, but I think yesterday it was fine because our other stars stepped up, and that's what you need. If Panarin doesn't have, maybe he didn't have his best. You're not going to have a game like Monday or Sunday every single game, but our star stepped up and he still had a good game himself. But don't get comfortable. Play every game like you're down in the series. That's really all I got to say.
I didn't even realize it before you just told me, but going from the Eastern Conference Finals loss against Tampa to the first round loss last year against the Devils, that's back-to-back series in which the Rangers had a 2-0 series lead and ended up losing it. So let's keep that confidence. Don't get too comfortable and end that streak before it becomes a red thing. I don't want to think about that. That hurts that you told me that. But
I'm sorry.
Colin, give us your thoughts, and then if no one else has anything else to add, we can start to wrap things up here.
I think, the point that Will just brought up, it's funny because I was thinking, I think that those stats that he just threw out, the back-to-back 2-0 series leads to being, reverse swept almost, or reverse swept by the Lightning and then beat by the Devils. I think it's very fresh in a lot of the players' minds. I'm glad that there hasn't been a lot of turnover because hopefully they'll choose to use that as fuel. And, I think Laviolette will also be able to take those and be like, look at what we did here. Look at what you had and what went wrong. And I think that, they're looking obviously to end that doubt and end those questions that are constantly popping up about them. And if they're real contenders or not, whether that be, everybody says that the Rangers first round exits and the President's Trophy curse and whatnot. But I think that there's a lot of stigmas that they're looking to end here. And I think that, this is the team to do it. I think that they all are very hungry for it. I mean, you never heard Panarin talk like this before. He's usually been pretty quiet and just like in the playoffs doing his thing. This year before the playoffs even started, he's like, we need the cup. Like it's cup or bust. And I think that, you're getting that vocal from him is just huge, and how he's thinking and his psyche and everything like that. So I think I think they know where they're at. They know what's been done, and they know what they need to do. And now it's just a matter of going out there and doing it. And I think with Laviolette, that puts them in the best chance to do it. Because as we've mentioned 3 times now, I'm like before, this is not Gerard Gallant. This is a coach who is playing chess, not checkers. He's not going to watch the other coach make adjustments and sit there and just continue to do the same thing over and over and be like, why isn't this working? I think that Tony mentioned it earlier, that he has really answered the call every time there's been any sort of adversity against this team, whether it was the goalie struggles and whether or not to start quick and take a couple of starts off Chesty's plate and give him the time to kind of get his mental right, or, Zibanejad's slump, or, the injuries that we had because we were down Fox for a good chunk of time and Hedel. And, it's been throughout the season. We lost Trouba a couple times. Lindgren, obviously, is made of paper mache and glass, but he continues to bounce back. But you constantly got to find somebody to fill that spot. And I think he also played a huge role in some of the deadline acquisitions that were made that have been crucial for this team, even though they might not have seemed like it. So I think, everything that he's contributed to this team will take us to that next level. And we know that this team is good. We know that they can go to a conference final. They did it on a surprise run 2 years ago, and they've only gotten better and gained that experience. So now it's just up to them to go and do it and get the job done.
Yeah, man. I mean, all the Rangers really need to do is trust Laviolette, trust the process, stay confident, don't get comfortable. Just like Tony said, it's a lot of the same players, but it's an entirely different team, different mindset, different skill sets unlocked. And if all goes well, the Rangers will hopefully have a smooth sailing into the second round. Who knows? Maybe the next game at MSG will be round 2, game 1 against the Carolina Hurricanes or the New York Islanders. We'll find out. But that about wraps up our Game 2 recap. We will be back shortly to preview Game 3 with you guys. As always, we can do a live stream an hour before game time. So set your schedules for that. But thank you to everyone for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed, make sure you like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss notification. If you are watching us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below on Game 2 and what you would like to see happen in Game 3. Lastly, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers for daily Rangers updates and content. Lastly, have a good one, and let's go
Rangers.